The arena on Prime could hold 100,000 souls, and today every seat was filled. They had come to watch blood spill on the sand. They always did. Lyra stood at the entrance gate and tried to stop her forearms from shaking. She was small, barely 4 feet tall, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that her people used for seeing in the dim light of their lost. They were not built for fighting. They were builders and thinkers and diplomats. They solved problems with words and patience. But they did not care about words. They cared only about strength. The gate opened and the roar of the crowd washed over her like a wave. Lyra stepped forward into the sunlight and felt the heat of the sand beneath her bare feet. Across the arena she could see him waiting. Executor, the champion of the Empire. He stood 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that gleamed like armor. His eyes were yellow and cold, and they watched her the way a predator watches something small and helpless. He had killed 300 opponents in this arena. He had never lost. Lyra walked to the center of the sand and stopped. She looked up at the observation galleries that ringed the arena. Different species filled different sections. She saw the clicking their mandibles in anticipation. She saw the gas breathing floating in their sealed chambers, and she saw something else, something new. Humans. They were a recent arrival to this part of the galaxy. Lyra had heard stories about them, but she had never seen one before. They looked strange to her. Only 2 arms, soft skin without scales or shells. They seemed fragile, almost as fragile as her own people. They sat in a small section of the gallery, watching with expressions she could not read. One of them stood at the railing, a male with brown hair and a strong jaw. He wore a uniform and his hands gripped the metal bar in front of him so hard that his knuckles had turned white. Beside him stood a female with short dark hair and the markings of a ship captain on her collar. She said something to the male, and he shook his head but did not look away from the arena. Lyra wondered why he looked so angry. Humans had no connection to her people. They had nothing to gain from caring about her fate. The crowd fell silent as the high speaker rose from his throne. He was old and massive. His scales faded too, but his voice still carried across the arena like thunder. "Citizens of the Empire," he announced, "today we settle the question of the resistance. This female represents her people. If she defeats our champion, her species will be granted mercy. If she falls, they will be erased from the stars." Lyra closed her eyes. She thought of the refugee ships hiding in the outer systems. She thought of the children who had never seen there, born in the darkness between stars. She thought of her mother, who had died when they burned their cities. She opened her eyes and looked at. He was smiling. "I will make this quick," he said. His voice was deep and amused. "Your people were never meant to survive. Nature made you weak. The universe has no place for weakness." He drew his blade. It was a plasma sword, 3 feet of burning energy that could cut through steel. The crowd cheered. Lyra had no weapon. They had given her nothing. They wanted a show, not a fight. Moved, he was fast, faster than anything that large should be. Lyra tried to dodge, but his fist caught her in the chest and sent her flying across the sand. She hit the ground hard and tasted blood in her mouth. The crowd roared with laughter. She pushed herself up on shaking arms. All 4 of them trembled, but she stood. She would not die on her knees. Walked toward her slowly. He was enjoying this. "Your people begged for mercy when we came to your world," he said. "They offered us everything. Their knowledge, their technology, their service. Do you know what we told them?" He struck her again, this time across the face. Lyra spun and fell, her vision going dark at the edges. "We told them that mercy is for the strong to give," continued, "and you are not strong." Lyra tried to stand again, but her legs would not obey. She managed to get to her knees and stayed there, swaying. Blood ran down her face and dripped onto the sand. In the gallery, the human male was shouting something. The female captain grabbed his arm and spoke sharply to him. Other humans were pulling him back from the railing, but he kept fighting them, kept trying to get free. Lyra did not understand why. She was nobody to him, just another dying alien in a galaxy full of death. Stood over her and raised his plasma blade. The light from it cast harsh shadows across his face. "Any last words, little?" Lyra looked up at him. She thought of her mother again. Her mother had been brave at the end. She had faced the soldiers without begging, without crying. She had died standing. "My people will remember," Lyra said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Even if I fall today, someone will remember us. Someone will tell our story. And one day, someone will make you pay for what you have done." Laughed who? They watched us conquer a dozen worlds and did nothing. No one will avenge you, no one will even remember your name. He raised the blade higher. In the gallery, the human male finally broke free from the hands holding him. He did something that Lyra could not see clearly through her blurred vision. There was shouting. The female captain was yelling orders. Other humans were running toward him. But he was already moving. He vaulted over the railing and dropped 20 feet to the arena sand below. He landed hard, rolled, and came up standing. The arena fell completely silent. 100,000 stared at the human standing alone on the bloody sand. The human walked forward. He stopped 10 feet from and spoke in a loud, clear voice. "I challenge." Lyra stared at him. She did not understand the words, but did. His yellow eyes went wide and his blade lowered slightly. "You challenge me?" asked. "You a human, you are insects, you are nothing." "I challenge," the human repeated. "By your own laws, single combat, her life for mine." In the observation gallery, the female captain had gone very still. Her face was pale. She knew, as everyone now knew, that the human had just offered to die in the place of a stranger. Began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed across the silent arena. He looked at the human with something like delight in his cold eyes. "Very well, little human," he said. "I accept your challenge. I will kill you first and then I will finish the... Today the universe will learn that humans are just as weak as the rest." The human did not answer. He just stood there in the sand, alone and unarmed, facing a 7-foot killing machine. And Lyra, bleeding and broken on her knees, wondered if she was watching a hero or a fool. Cole stood on the hot sand and watched the giant circle around him. He knew he had just done something very stupid. He also knew he would do it again without hesitation. He had watched the small alien woman fight. He had watched her stand up after every blow. He had watched her face certain death with more courage than most soldiers he knew. And when raised his blade for the killing strike, something inside had simply broken. He could not watch another innocent die while he stood by and did nothing. The crowd was buzzing now. The in the stands were talking among themselves in sharp, clicking voices. They had never seen anything like this. No one challenged an executor, certainly not a human, a member of a species that considered barely above animals. Captain Laura was standing at the railing of the observation gallery. Her face was a mask of controlled fury. Could guess what she was thinking. He had just violated every protocol in the book. He had interfered in a local ritual. He had potentially destroyed months of diplomatic negotiations, and he had almost certainly signed his own death warrant. But did not care about protocols, not anymore. "You want to fight with that?" asked, pointing its empty hands. "I will give you a weapon, little human. I want this to last." Shook his head. "I have my own weapon on my ship, a bow." The word did not translate well, frowned. "A bow? What is a bow?" "A tool for throwing arrows," said. "Sharp sticks." Stared at him for a long moment. Then he started laughing again. This time, the whole arena joined him. 100,000 laughed at the stupid human who wanted to fight their champion with sharp sticks. "Bring him his toy," called out to the officials. "I want to see this." Waited. He tried not to think about what he was doing. He tried not to think about his parents back on Earth, or his sister who had just had her first child. He tried not to think about the fact that he was probably going to die in the next few minutes. Instead, he thought about his grandfather. Henry Cole had been a hunter all his life. He had lived in the mountains of Montana and he had taught everything he knew about patience and precision and the art of the bow. Had started shooting when he was 6 years old. By the time he was 16, he was winning national competitions. By the time he joined the fleet, he was one of the best archers on the planet. But this was not a competition. This was a fight to the death against an alien warrior who was faster, stronger, and more experienced than anyone had ever faced. An official approached with compound bow and quiver. The bow was made of carbon fiber and aluminum, a sleek black weapon that looked almost delicate compared to his massive plasma blade. The official handed it over with a sneer of contempt. Took the bow and tested the string. It was still perfectly tuned. He had maintained it every week during the voyage, never knowing when he might need it. He slung the quiver over his shoulder and counted the arrows by touch. 24. 24 chances to kill something that had never been killed. Across the arena, the small alien woman was being dragged to the side by guards. She was barely conscious, her blue skin streaked with blood, but her dark eyes were open and they were fixed on. He gave her a small nod. He hoped she understood. "Are you ready, human?" called out. He was holding his plasma blade loosely, almost carelessly. He did not see as a threat. He saw him as entertainment. Drew an arrow and nocked it. He raised the bow and aimed at the center of his chest. "Ready," he said. The high speaker raised his hand. The crowd fell silent. Then his hand dropped and charged. He was impossibly fast, had studied recordings of warriors, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. One moment was 30 feet away. The next moment he was right there, his blade swinging in a deadly arc. Threw himself to the side. The blade missed him by inches. He felt the heat of it on his skin as he rolled across the sand and came up in a crouch. He loosed his first arrow. It flew straight and true, aimed at its throat, but the was already moving. The arrow glanced off his shoulder scales and spun away into the sand. Turned and came at him again, ran. The crowd booed. To them, running was cowardice. A true warrior stood and fought, but was not interested in being a true warrior by standards. He was interested in surviving. He sprinted across the arena, putting distance between himself and. There were stone pillars scattered across the sand, relics of some ancient ritual. Ducked behind one and used the moment to steady his breathing. Smashed through the pillar like it was made of paper. Stone exploded in all directions, barely rolled clear in time. He came up firing, 2 arrows in quick succession. The first hit his arm and stuck there, sunk an inch into the flesh between his scales. The second went wide as twisted away. Looked down at the arrow in his arm. He pulled it out slowly and held it up for the crowd to see. Dark blood dripped from the wound. The arena went quiet. No one had made an executor bleed in years. "You surprised me," admitted. His voice had lost some of its amusement. "You are faster than I expected, but speed will not save you. Nothing will save you." He moved again, dodged again. This time the blade caught the edge of his uniform and sliced through the fabric. He felt a line of fire across his ribs. First blood to the. Kept moving. He fired when he could, dodged when he had to. Another arrow found its mark in his thigh. Another grazed his cheek and left a thin line of blood. But was learning too. He was getting faster, more accurate. He was starting to predict where would move. The human was running out of space, running out of arrows, running out of time. In the observation gallery, Captain watched with her hands gripped tight on the railing. She had stopped being angry. Now she was simply afraid. Afraid for the young officer who had thrown away his life for a stranger. Beside her, the other humans were silent. They were all thinking the same thing. They were watching one of their own die. But was not dead yet. He was bleeding from a dozen small cuts. His uniform was torn and stained with sweat and sand. His breath came in ragged gasps, but he was still standing, still fighting. He had 8 arrows left, 8 chances to find a weakness. And somewhere in the back of his mind, his grandfather's voice was whispering the same thing he had said 1,000 times during those long hunting trips in the mountains. "Patience, boy, wait for the shot. The right shot only comes once." Ran and waited, and hoped that the right shot would come before his luck ran out. The sun had moved across the sky, and still the fight continued. What they had expected to last minutes had stretched into nearly an hour. The crowd had stopped laughing long ago. Was exhausted. His legs burned with every step. His arms ached from drawing the bow again and again. The cuts on his body had stopped bleeding, but they still stung with every movement. He had 6 arrows left. But he was still alive, and was bleeding from 7 wounds. The champion was not laughing anymore. His yellow eyes were narrow with frustration and something that might have been the beginning of fear. He had never fought an opponent like this. Every enemy he had ever faced had stood before him and tried to match his strength. They had all died quickly. This human refused to fight that way. He ran. He hid. He struck from angles that could not predict. He was like water, flowing around every attack and finding every crack in its defense. It was infuriating, it was humiliating, and slowly it was working. "Stand still and fight me," roared. He swung his blade in a wide arc that would have cut in half if it had connected, but was not there anymore. He had dropped flat on the sand and rolled between his legs, coming up behind him. Another arrow flew. This one buried itself in the back of his knee, right in the soft spot where his scales did not protect him. Stumbled. For the first time in the fight, he lost his balance. He caught himself before he fell, but the damage was done. The crowd had seen their champion stumble. In the stands, the other alien species were watching with new interest. The had stopped clicking. The had pressed closer to the walls of their chambers. They had all lived under rule for generations. They had all watched their champions fall to blades. They had all accepted that they were unbeatable. Now they were not so sure. Lyra watched from the edge of the arena. The guards had propped her against a wall and left her there, assuming she would die from her wounds. But she was still breathing, still watching, still hopping. She did not understand humans. She did not understand why this one had risked everything for her. But she understood courage when she saw it. And this human had more courage than anyone she had ever met. Circled around a broken pillar and tried to catch his breath. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. He had lost more blood than he wanted to admit. His hands were shaking as he pulled another arrow from his quiver. 5 left. Limped after him. The arrow in his knee was slowing him down, but he was still dangerous, still deadly. One good hit would end the fight. You cannot win, said. His voice was rough with pain and anger. Even if you kill me, my people will hunt you down. They will destroy your ship. They will burn your no one insults thee in lives. Did not answer. He was saving his breath. Charged. Even wounded, he was terrifyingly fast. Dodged left, then right, then threw himself backward as the blade whistled past his face. He felt the heat of it singe his eyebrows. He fired from the ground. The arrow punched through the scales on side and sank deep into his flesh, roared and staggered back. 8 wounds now. Dark blood was pooling on the sand beneath him. Any normal being would have collapsed by now, but was not normal. He was the product of generations of breeding for combat, enhanced with drugs and implants that pushed his body beyond its natural limits. He was dying, but he was not dead yet. Scrambled to his feet and ran. He made it 10 steps before caught him. This massive fist slammed into his back and sent him flying. He crashed against a pillar and heard something crack. Pain exploded through his chest. Broken ribs, at least 2. His bow skidded across the sand, out of reach. Advanced slowly. He was savoring the moment. Now it ends, human. You fought well, better than anyone expected, but strength always wins in the end. Tried to stand. His legs would not cooperate. He managed to get to his knees and stayed there, swaying. Blood dripped from his mouth. In the gallery, Captain closed her eyes. She could not watch. Lyra watched. She could not look away. Looked up at the monster standing over him. He thought about giving up. He thought about accepting death with dignity, the way Lyra had. He thought about how peaceful it would be to just let go. But then he thought about his grandfather. He thought about all those mornings in the mountains, freezing and tired, waiting for a shot that might never come. He thought about the old man's voice, patient and steady. The hunt is not over until you decide it is over. As long as you are breathing, you are still in the fight. Was still breathing. He looked at the bow lying on the sand. It was 15 feet away, too far to reach before killed him, but his quiver was still on his back. Slowly, painfully, he reached over his shoulder and pulled out an arrow, then another. He held them both in his right hand, points forward. Raised his blade. Any last words? Smiled. It hurt, but he smiled anyway. Just one, he said, duck. And then he threw himself forward, under swing, and drove both arrows up into the soft flesh beneath his jaw. His eyes went wide. His blade dropped from suddenly nerveless fingers. He reached up and touched the arrows sticking out of his throat. Dark blood poured over his hands. He tried to speak. Nothing came out but a wet gurgle. Pulled himself across the sand toward his bow. His broken ribs screamed with every movement. His vision was going dark, but he reached the bow, grabbed it, and knocked his last arrow. Was still standing, still alive. The arrows in his throat had not killed him, not yet. He was pulling them out one by one with hands that shook but still moved. Raised the bow. He aimed for the hole the arrows had made, the wound that was still bleeding, still open. The hunt is over, he whispered. And he released. The arrow flew straight and true. It entered the wound beneath his jaw and kept going, punching through flesh and bone until it lodged in the base of his skull. Executor, champion of the Empire, undefeated in 300 battles, stood frozen for a single heartbeat. Then he fell. He hit the sand with a sound like thunder. His body twitched once, twice, and then went still. His yellow eyes stared up at the sky, empty and cold. The arena was silent. 100,000 sat in stunned disbelief. Their champion was dead, killed by a human, killed by sharp sticks. Lowered his bow. His arms had no strength left. The weapon slipped from his fingers and fell to the sand. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out and he collapsed beside it. The silence stretched on. No one moved, no one spoke. Then Lyra screamed. It was not a scream of fear or pain. It was something else entirely. It was the sound of hope being reborn after years of darkness. She screamed and the sound echoed across the arena, breaking the spell that held everyone frozen. The high speaker rose from his throne. His old face was pale beneath his scales. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in his long life, he did not know what to say. Captain was already moving. She barked orders into her communicator, and within seconds a shuttle was dropping out of the sky, ignoring all protocols about restricted airspace. It landed on the arena sand and human soldiers poured out, weapons ready. The guards started forward, but the high speaker raised his hand and they stopped. He knew the law. Everyone knew the law. The challenge had been issued and accepted according to ancient tradition. The human had won. By law, Lyra was free. Her people were free. The soldiers reached first. They lifted him carefully and carried him toward the shuttle. He was barely conscious, drifting in and out of awareness. He heard voices around him, shouting orders and calling for medical teams. "Get the two," someone said, Captain's voice. "She comes with us." More soldiers moved toward Lyra. They lifted her gently and carried her to the shuttle. She did not resist. She could not stop staring at the human who had saved her life. The shuttle doors closed and the craft lifted off. Through the window, could see the arena shrinking below them. He could see his body lying in the sand, surrounded by who still could not believe what they had witnessed. Then his vision went dark and he knew nothing more. He woke up in a medical bay. White walls, soft lights, the hum of machinery. He tried to move and pain shot through his chest, but it was distant and muffled. They had given him something for it. Captain was sitting beside his bed. Her face was tired, but there was something in her eyes that might have been pride. "You are an idiot," she said. Managed a weak smile. "Yes, ma'am." "You violated direct orders. You interfered in a diplomatic situation. You nearly started a war." "Yes, ma'am." "You are supposed to be facing court-martial right now." Closed his eyes. He had expected this. He had known the cost when he jumped into that arena. "I understand." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "They are in chaos. Half of them want to honor the result of the challenge. The other half want to destroy us. But they cannot agree on anything, and while they argue, the other species in their empire are watching." Opened his eyes, watching. "You did something no one thought was possible. You showed them that they can be beaten, that their champions are not invincible." Shook her head. "We are receiving communications from a dozen species. Some want alliances, some want protection, some just want to know how we did it." Stared at her. He had not thought about any of that. He had not been thinking about politics or empires or the balance of power. He had just seen someone in trouble and decided to help. "What about he asked. "Alive, recovering in the next room. She has been asking about you." Tried to sit up. The pain flared and he fell back against the pillow. "I want to see her." "Later, you need rest." Stood up. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I have decided not to recommend court-martial. What you did was reckless and stupid, but it was also brave, and sometimes brave and stupid are the same thing." She walked to the door and paused. "You did good. Your grandfather would be proud." Then she was gone. Lay in the quiet room and thought about what she had said. He thought about the empire, built on the belief that strength was everything. He thought about all the species they had conquered, all the worlds they had burned, all the people they had killed because they believed weakness deserved death. He thought about Lyra, small and fragile and braver than anyone had a right to be. She had faced death without begging, without breaking. She had been ready to die for her people, and had refused to let her. He did not know if what he had done would change anything. He did not know if they would honor their laws or if they would come seeking revenge. He did not know what the future held for humanity or for anyone else. But he knew one thing. He knew that when he had seen someone in pain, someone helpless, someone about to die for no reason except that the universe was cruel, he had chosen to act. He had chosen to stand up. That was what humans did. That was what made them different. Not strength, not technology, not numbers or weapons or ships. Just the stubborn refusal to let evil win without a fight. Closed his eyes and let sleep take him. And somewhere in the next room, A small blue alien with 4 arms was whispering a prayer of thanks in a language that had nearly been lost forever. She was praying for the human who had saved her. 3 days past before was strong enough to leave his bed. The doctors had done their work well. His ribs were healing, sealed together with medical technology that would have seemed like magic to his grandfather. The cuts and bruises were fading. Soon there would be no visible sign of what he had endured in that arena, but knew he would carry it with him forever. He was sitting by the observation window when Lyra came to see him. She moved slowly, still recovering from her own wounds, but she walked on her own feet. All 4 of her arms were wrapped in bandages, but her dark eyes were clear and bright. She stopped a few feet away and looked at him. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "I do not know how to thank you," she finally said. Her voice was soft and musical like wind through bells. "My people have a tradition. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that can never be repaid. You carry their name in your heart until you die." Shook his head. "You do not owe me anything." "I owe you everything." Lyra moved closer. She reached out with 2 of her hands and took one of his. Her skin was cool and smooth like polished stone. "Why did you do it? You did not know me. You had no reason to risk your life." Thought about the question. He had been asking himself the same thing ever since he woke up. Why had he jumped into that arena? Why had he thrown away his career, possibly his life, for a stranger? The answer, when it came, was simpler than he expected. "Because I could," he said. "Because I was there and I could do something. And if I had walked away, if I had let them kill you, I would not have been able to live with myself." Lyra stared at him. "Among my people, such thinking is considered admirable but foolish. We believe in survival, in preservation. We endure because we do not take unnecessary risks." "Maybe that is why you needed someone to stand for you," said gently. "Sometimes survival is not enough. Sometimes you have to fight." Lyra was quiet for a long time, then she nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps we have been so focused on surviving that we forgot how to live." She squeezed his hand. "You have given us a second chance, not just freedom from but something more. You have shown us what courage looks like." The door opened and Captain entered. She had a data pad in her hand and a complex expression on her face. "We just received a message from Earth," she said. "The Assembly has voted. They are offering sanctuary to all refugees. Transport ships are being prepared as we speak." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Her whole body trembled. "They would do this for us? They do not even know us." "They know enough," said. "They know that a human risked his life to save you, and they know that is the kind of species you are, the kind worth saving." She looked at. "The broadcast of your fight has spread across the sector. Everyone has seen it. Everyone knows what you did." Frowned. Broadcast. The transmitted it lived to every world in their empire. They wanted everyone to see their champion destroy the foolish human. Allowed herself a small smile. It did not go the way they planned. She handed the data pad to. He looked at the screen and saw message after message. Communications from species he had never heard of. Questions, congratulations, requests for contact. The galaxy was watching humanity now. "What happens next?" asked. "That depends on a lot of things. They are divided. Some of them respect what you did, strange as that sounds. Others want revenge. We are treading carefully." Paused. "But whatever happens, things have changed. Because of you, because of one arrow." She left them alone again. Lyra moved to the window and looked out at the stars. Joined her. They stood side by side in silence, watching the endless darkness dotted with points of light. "My mother told me stories when I was young," Lyra said quietly. "Stories about heroes who stood against impossible odds. I thought they were just fantasies. I never believed anyone would actually do such things." She turned to look at him. "You proved her right. You proved that heroes are real." Shook his head. "I am not a hero. I am just a guy who knows how to shoot a bow." "You are both," Lyra said. "And my people will never forget. For as long as any lives, we will tell the story of the human who stood in the sand and refused to let us die. We will tell our children, and they will tell their children, until the stars grow cold." Did not know what to say. He had never wanted fame or glory. He had just done what seemed right. But looking at Lyra, seeing the hope in her eyes, he understood that sometimes one act could change everything. One person standing up could inspire a galaxy. One arrow could fell an empire. "What will you do now?" he asked. "Go home," Lyra said, "or what is left of it. We have ships full of refugees scattered across a dozen systems. Now we have somewhere to bring them, a new home with humans who will protect us." She smiled, and it was the first time I'd seen her smile. It transformed her face, made her look young and alive. "Will you come visit us?" "Yes," said I, "would like that." They stood together at the window as the ship turned toward Earth. Behind them, the Empire was fracturing. Conquered species were demanding independence. The old order was crumbling. And somewhere out in the darkness, the refugees were receiving the news. They were learning that they were no longer alone, that someone had fought for them, that they had a future. All because one human had refused to look away. All because of the weight of a single arrow. The ship jumped to faster than light speed, and the stars blurred into streaks of white. Watched them and thought about his grandfather, about Montana, about all the mornings spent waiting for the perfect shot. The old man had taught him that the most important shot was not the one that hit the target. It was the one you took when everything was against you, when giving up would have been easy, when no one would have blamed you for walking away. Had taken that shot, and he had not missed. He closed his eyes and smiled. The hunt was over, but the story was just beginning.